Welcome to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler. I'm your host. I'm a Silver Fox advisor and also the founder of OneBestConsult.com. This show is recorded and broadcast live on February 17th of this year. We're looking at part 3 of a soup to nuts conversation with Mr. Jon Stacy, Advocoach, entitled Roadmap to Success, Mergers and Acquisitions for Small Businesses. You can listen to all 3 segments by going to our page at irlonestar.com, the Weekly Business Hour, or go to the website, onebestconsult.com. We're going to return live to the studio on March 2nd, and we're going to start the month of March is going to be our Entrepreneur Success Series, and we have Mr. Andy King, a local business owner, owns a marketing firm, and I hope you'll tune in to listen to his success story, and we'll have other local entrepreneurs sharing theirs throughout the month of March. If you'd like to sponsor the program, it's very easy. Just reach out to me, Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. I hope you enjoy the show and that you will join us again live 11 a.m. on March 2nd.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZWLP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rick Schissler. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I appreciate you tuning in today. I think we've got a really good show for you. We're going to have Jon Stacy rejoin us shortly to do part 3, the last in the 3-part soup to nuts conversation that we've been having with Jon. It's been great information thus far, and I hope you will join the conversation and reach out. Something I don't get enough of that I'd love to have you respond to is send me an email. If you've got a question about something we're talking about on the air, got a comment about the show, or even if you have a question about your business, just a general question or something, I'd be glad to take a look at it and reply to your email and give you my perspective, my thoughts on what your question is. Well, the Weekly Business Hour is where Montgomery County and now businesses throughout the world come to talk about the latest in business news, ideas to improve your business, and to be part of conversations that I believe can make a real difference in your business, even today. The show is currently being broadcast on Facebook. You can go there and you can watch on Facebook Live as well as listen to the show. So just go to Facebook or YouTube, the Weekly Business Hour page or channel, and click on it, and you can watch as well as listen to the show today. The show today is sponsored by OneBestConsult.com. That's the number OneBestConsult.com. That's a website for small business owners, managers to come and be part of a community. There's no cost to be there for you. You can join, you drop your email address. You can receive our weekly newsletter, our monthly newsletter, videos that we do, interviews that we do. They go out to everyone who's a member, and you can pose questions. Bring up issues that you have in your business, and others in the community will respond to you and give you their experience, share their experience with you, and give you a perspective perhaps that you hadn't thought about. So I encourage you, go to the website. It's the One Best Consult, BestConsult.com. Well, as I said earlier, we've got Jon Stacy back. He's back for part 3 of a soup to nuts conversation. Jon Stacy's an Advocoach, and he has provided us with what I call, or he calls, a roadmap to success, mergers and acquisitions. And the question is posed, can your business grow through a merger with another business, or perhaps the purchase or acquisition of a business? Jon's done a wonderful job bringing up the pros and cons, the approach that he recommends in doing a purchase or a merger. And today we're going to talk about what I call the implementation phase. That's once you've made the decision, you've pulled that trigger, and now you've got to make some changes. You've got to integrate a business, And John calls it integration, which is great. Now, I believe the really difficult work. Many times people feel that the actual negotiation to get to the point of closing the deal is the most difficult. I'm not going to disagree. For many of us, we only do it once or twice maybe in our career. But bringing that new business into your business, whether you bought it or you merge with someone, that is really the key to the success and the payoff for the investment that you've made. So I encourage you, listen and hear the third and final part of our Soup to Nuts conversation with Jon Stacy, entitled Roadmap to Success, Mergers and Acquisitions. This is Rick Schissler. I'm the host of the Weekly Business Hour, and we are in the middle, in fact, coming down to the end, I should say, of a wonderful conversation with Jon Stacy. He's an advocate coach, and we've been talking about developing your own roadmap to success so that you too can do mergers and acquisitions and do it in a way that, as John likes to say, 1 + 1 = 3. I like that expression. It's well done. Well, John, we're down to the final session. We are going to hopefully engage in a great summary for folks who have listened to the other parts, part 1 and 2. Then this kind of brings it all into focus. So where do we start?
Okay, so from a summary perspective, as we talk about the M&A process, I really think there's 8 steps in this process to make sure that we increase our odds for success. The first one's all about developing the strategy, making sure that we understand what we're trying to accomplish, how much money we want to invest, but having a strategy to move forward. It's about identifying, number 2 is about identifying potential people that we want to acquire, okay? And there's a number of things that we're looking at from our strategy. So let's identify some companies in our area or in the U.S. or whatever area we're in to acquire. And then once we go through this agreement, then we start saying, okay, let's exchange information. And that's all about getting the right information so that we can start doing our due diligence. Once we have that information, we go through this valuation process, and we've talked about multiple types of valuations. Won't go into them. Go back and listen to the last series. Deal closure. We've made a decision. It's a go. We want to do the deal. We agree on what the price and all the terms are going to be. We develop a purchase agreement. Make sure you have a professional help you. If you don't have the experience, if you haven't done it before, pay someone to help you. It will save you a lot of money in the long term. You finish your due diligence, and then we have an offer. The offer is acceptance, and now we're really into the negotiation. And as we're done, then it's about deal closure and integration. So that's really the first part of the merger and acquisition process. We've got a deal, and we're good to close. Well, now it's time for integration. And in my opinion, the integration is one of those things that is thought about too late in the process, and it's one of the significant reasons that mergers fail. Okay? So you've spent all this time and effort and money and people and resources, and then all of a sudden we get down to integration, we sign the deal, and we're going, okay, well, it's a transaction, we're good to go. Well, guess what? We're not good to go. And there's a reason we're doing this deal, and it's all about creating shareholder wealth. There's some things you put together in the strategy that says, I'm going to do this. And again, back to the 1 + 1 = 3. But if we don't finish this, our acquisition is going to fail. And like I said, 70 to 80% of them do fail. So what are the steps to make sure that we do a good integration? And I can tell you some stories. I had been with the company. I think we had done well over 100 acquisitions over a 5-year period. Wow, a lot of. We got to a point, though, that we thought, number one, anybody we acquired would be successful. And guess what? You still got to do the due diligence. You still have to follow the process. But we really didn't do a great job on the integration piece of it. Okay? So what happened was that was a long-term failure on a lot of these particular companies. And they were $2 to $3 million companies, so there was a lot of small companies that were being acquired. you have to do your due diligence. You have to have a plan. So I put together really 6 steps that we can do. And if we do these in an integration process, we're going to have a successful integration so that 1 + 1 does equal 3, and we can get that synergy, increase the shareholder value the way that we expected.
Well, and I think the difficulty we have in small business, again, and I talk about this probably too much, but small business people, as a rule, don't like to plan as far as really sit down and focus and build a simple business plan, marketing plan, whatever. And for me, simple's 1 or 2 pages. I know you can 50 page, but the idea, I just want them to get started on something, and we work on that a lot. I do with my clients because it's part of that roadmap idea and concept. So I can see the true value in, if I'm going to buy something, then to integrate that 1 or 100 or 1,000 employees into my business so that it all goes smoothly. Because to me, when I visualize the 1 + 1, we've got to the 1 + 1. That's the closing of the transaction. Right. The equals is still up in the air. It might be that way for 6 months, a year, 5 years. But the real work starts, right? Once the closing's done and everybody shakes hands and pops the champagne, now the real work starts. That's my opinion.
Well, you're absolutely right. To me, I say it's where the rubber meets the road. Now is the time, but I also said earlier, we need to have started the integration planning a long time before we actually close the deal, okay? And back to your plan, when I'm working with people that are selling, we actually put, a lot of cases, they haven't had a strategic plan. Even though it's late in their life cycle, I still make sure that we put together a strategic plan, because someone that's buying us wants to know where we thought we were going. And so that whole planning process, and it's a 1-page strategic plan. So there's some really good books out there. Scaling Up happens to be one with a 1-page strategic plan. The Rockefeller Habits is another good book. So there's a lot of good books out there to help you, so you don't have I'm in a corporation, I think our strategic plan was like 300 pages. Well, guess what? We did 300 pages, put it up on the shelf, and we were good to go, right? We had our plan, life was good. 1-page strategic plan for small businesses is great because it's something that you can look at. It's something you can work towards. You can talk about the rocks, and we've talked about that in a previous meeting. But that whole strategic planning is critical to success. Whether you're starting a business or you're exiting a business or you're buying a business, that planning process is critical.
Well, just a sidebar here for a second. Having that strategic plan and going through this process that'll increase the value of your business.
Yeah.
Because if I'm looking at your business and you bring out a strategic plan, I said, man, I hadn't thought about that. It'll change your thinking, your critical thinking potentially in the business. So let's start going through this list. We got 6 items to cover.
Okay, so real quick here. 1, the first thing is determine your guiding principles. And these are the principles that are going to direct your management team. It's going to direct you. It's going to be about your strategy, and it's going to include things like, what's the end state look like? What are our targets? What are our priorities? What are our risks? And what are our KPIs? It really comes down to, this is a framework for what we expect to get with this acquisition. Okay, so we got a framework now. It's a plan, or the start of a plan, but it's a framework to lay out to the team that's going to do the acquisition, or actually the integration. The next thing really is, then let's define the integration structure within the organization. Who's going to be responsible for what in the integration? Okay, and what part of the integration are they going to be responsible for? And that's critical. Who's responsible on the finance side? Who's responsible on the system side? Who's responsible on the HR side? Who's responsible for each of these areas? And they need to be involved so they understand what the guiding principles are. Okay. The next thing is really conduct a joint meeting. Okay. And some of this stuff may be confidential because we haven't gotten to a point yet where we want to communicate that this is happening, but there's a small group of people, and we're going to get together and we're going to talk about everybody's roles and responsibilities, the roadmap for what they need to be doing, what are the guiding principles, this is what we're trying to accomplish, so that the team that's involved with the integration, everybody is on the same page. Let's get everybody on the same page, rowing in the same direction so that we can move forward. So at that point, then we evaluate all the risk and develop a mitigation plan. Let's face it, everybody you acquire, not everything's going to be a perfect fit. There is going to be risk. Okay, let's make sure we have a mitigation plan for those risks so that we can address them. Make sense?
Absolutely. I think risk evaluation is a critical thing. I have a theory that I use, the three balls in the air risk evaluation, based on experience more than anything else. But the idea is that you just understand it. And again, I know some of this, if you're listening to it and you own that dry cleaning operation, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, this is mind-boggling for me. Why, but the idea is that if you check off on all these things, and there's not a lot, but if you take time to think through this, which means taking time outside your business, taking it right, we talk about that all the time.
Yep.
But checking off against these things, and particularly if you can surround yourself, and I'm being repetitive, with experts, meaning the lawyer, CPA, tax person you mentioned, and maybe others depending on the industry you're in.
Right.
Then if you get the right team together, they can help you do this. And the point is that when you do the one plus the one, you're not taking something on that's going to be a white elephant or whatever. I mean, it's going to work, and you'll have a chance to do that integration. So this is good stuff, real good stuff, and I encourage people, pay attention, because there's great opportunities to grow by merger and acquisition. Well, John, what are some of the other factors?
Well, the fifth one is really developing a post-integration project plan. A lot of times I've seen people have a plan in their head, okay? Well, having a plan in your head is not the same thing as having a plan that can be followed, documented and followed. So it's that team that we put together earlier is to really sit down and make sure we understand. We've already looked at the other company. We understand. We've gone into detail about everything within that company. We've got to really start thinking about how do we map over the things that we're going to be changing. And part of that then is a plan to get from here to here. And that plan may not be in the first month. This may be 6 months. So, for example, depending upon the size of the company, we may continue to operate in a separate nature until we can do all the planning to move the systems over. Okay, and systems doesn't sound like a big deal, but quite frankly, it's huge. It's simple things like email addresses. Are we going to change those? But it's also customer service modules that you might be using. How are you going to transition those if you don't have the same systems in place? But it's really all about putting a project plan, who's responsible, okay, what are we going to do? And the steps, who's responsible, and when does that have to get done? So that we have a detailed project plan that someone's responsible for, and depending upon the size of the company, there may be a lead that manages the people that are doing that. Depending upon the size of the company, you may need to hire some consultants to come in and do some of this stuff. But they have to own, but then again, you need to make sure they own it. Hiring a consultant is a great idea as long as you make sure they own it, right? And it's really, so as I'm sitting here thinking, one of the biggest things, and I've talked about it, is culture. And most companies don't think about the culture aspects of it. And, as you've gone through your experience, do you have anything that you've seen that's impacted your businesses as you've acquired them that if you had thought about culture more, something may have been a little more positive?
Well, I think even in an acquisition, if you're not even trying to merge a business, just acquiring, which I had a lot of experience in doing that, is evaluating the culture. And again, small business people, culture, what is that? And we talk about it on the show here as far as developing a positive, valuable culture in your own business. But that is something I know early on that I was not sensitive to. And this kind of gets to what you and I have discussed about fit. I mean, I was trained, I grew up in a family business. I had a culture with me of what I felt good business looked like and how it should be run and how people should be treated and da-da-da. And then you buy a business and they've got X number of people, or you build a business, but you buy it and you acquire it and they're not fitting your culture. So there's a lot of potential for issues to arise that people need to be aware of. And again, most businesses, not all, it's about people. So when you acquire a business or you merge a business, people should be way up the list to evaluate the people, not just if I like them or don't like them, but evaluate people, the customer, the vendors, but the people. And we're going to be able to fit into with these people? Or are the people not important? And there are a handful of businesses where few employees produce lots of revenue, especially in the technology area. Then maybe it's not so critical, but yet you're probably going to have one or two that know how it all works, and you need to make sure they fit in what you're doing, or that you can bring them around, or, otherwise you've got to assign a risk value to them that maybe is higher than you want to deal with.
So as you start talking about that, some of the things that we do from a strategic planning process is really start defining values. What are your values as a company? I like to say, values drive culture, culture drives behavior, behavior drives results. So if you want to drive results, really understand what your culture, what your values are. And so it's not, when I say culture, it's really, a lot of it has to do with the values of the company. And if you don't look at that, or if you don't understand the importance of that, then the odds of failure are higher. I was talking to a company, and it was as far as some things they want to sell in 18 months. Okay, well, so we had a long conversation, and I started bringing up values, and they said, I don't care about values, I just want to sell the company. Well, that's a little bit of a challenge, because if the people that are buying it, if they don't understand, then it's a little harder for them to understand. And as I sit here and talk, I've come from really more of a financial background a number of years, and numbers are numbers. It's black and white, right? So it took me a long time to figure out that it's not just numbers, it's about the people. And understand it is about the people. It's about the change management as we go through this, because part of this is the communication plan. How are we going to communicate as an organization this transition to both sides of it? And change management to me brings up a picture of, and I can't draw here, but I'll draw in the air, kind of the transition trough. Okay, there's a transition curve, and basically change, you're at this point and you want to get to here. Well, you can't go from here to here. No one makes that transition. There's always this downward and upward to get to this point. And so what our job as leaders is to minimize this trough and get that through that as quickly as possible, because everybody's going to go through the trough. And some people are going to get to the bottom of the trough and say, hey, I'm out. I don't want to go through this transition, but it's our job to make sure we go from here to here as quickly as possible. That's part of our job in the integration process, is to make sure that we have a communication plan and understanding what we're going to be doing with all employees, communicate to them, and then that includes staffing, retention plans. In some cases, it may be stay bonuses, and so there's a lot of different things that we have to think about from a planning perspective. And then some of those things, organizational structure. Two companies coming together. You would think that, okay, the acquiring company is going to take all the primary jobs, right? Well, that doesn't happen all the time, because part of this evaluation process is evaluating people. So the larger companies, there's going to be some intermixture of different leadership. I was talking to a friend of mine recently out of the clear blue. He didn't know this. He's been with them a year or so. His company got acquired. Well, actually, no. His company acquired another company, but the acquired company, the CEO, ended up being the CEO, not the CEO of the acquiring company. He has no idea what's going on. He's been left out of meetings, and he manages a number of people across the U.S. And so, do you think this is a productive environment? I guarantee you, there's more talk at the water cooler talking about what's going to happen than what do I need to do to perform today. So we can address a lot of these things as we look at our project plan.
Well, I think that's an important thing, because it is all about people, and that is a major point in any kind of discussion about acquisition or merger. It needs to be right up there in the top of the list, in my opinion, because you're acquiring people, whether it be 1 or 100 or 1,000, as I said earlier, because depending on the business and the importance of, that's one reason to make the acquisition, is you get the people in the plant or whatever to grow your business, and people are definitely part of that equation. So it does you no good if they're not the right people for your particular business. What are some other points? We're kind of wrapping up now that you would like to make in summary.
Well, I think in summary, we've talked about the 8 processes over the last couple of weeks as far as what we need to do. And it's, to me, I'm a planner. but it's all about planning for the future, planning for success. If you don't plan for success, you're not planning for failure. That makes sense. Somehow it wasn't exactly right. However, it really comes down to planning, making sure that when you evaluate the company, you do a fair evaluation, pay the right amount. One of the reasons people fail is they paid way too much for the acquisition and they get underwater, but they didn't follow their plan because they only want to invest X amount of dollars. So throughout those processes, through the negotiation, but the key thing to me then becomes planning the integration. It's not just a tactical plan, it's a strategic plan on how do we move from, whether you're buying one company, how do you move from one owner to the next, or how do we integrate? What's the plan? What's the people plan? What's the communication plan? What are we doing on day one? There's all these planning pieces that need to be in place so that we can begin executing. Make sure you build a team. Internal, because there's two teams. There's the internal team, which is the project, really developing the project plan to integrate. And then there's this team of experts that you need to help you because you don't have the expertise to do some things. And that's, the tax specialist, the CPA, the attorney, those types of people, because it's important to get the right expertise to help you have a successful integration.
Well, and again, that expertise, I can't overstate that. And again, that's hard for a small business. Just to hire experts, to hire a lawyer, hire a CPA, just in general. But to say, hey, I would like to acquire a business or merge, and now I've got to hire a team of people. That's one of the good reasons to have some of that team in place, the good lawyer, the good CPA, tax advisor,
Absolutely.
people you used, because then you know who they are, what they can do, what their limitations are. And I've dealt with that in an acquisition where they replaced members of the team. Very wise on their part, because they weren't really geared for this kind of work. So it's having a good team, not only internally but externally, is very, very important. Well, John, we've covered a lot of ground. I deeply appreciate it. And again, I think, as far-fetched as it may sound to you, if you're listening to this program about growing your business through a merger and acquisition, it's available. Small businesses need to pay attention to that. And you make the wonderful point statistically how many thousands of people in this country are reaching the standard retirement age. And it may be 66, 70, but there's so many and so many of these people own small businesses. And so those businesses are going to be up for sale. I see it. I hear about it. So why not prepare yourself if you want to grow your business? That's a big if, because you got to focus and dedicate yourself. Prepare yourself.
But it may not be if you want to grow the business. It's if you want to prepare the business for your exit. And it's one of those things you need to plan now. 5 years out. We'll say 3 to 5, but 5 years out, you need to be thinking, what do I want to do? When do I want to go to the beach, or what do I want to do when I retire? And I can tell you, I've talked to some people about, well, what are you going to do? And I go, what are you going to do when you exit your business? I'm going to just die. Well, I guess that is a plan, but that's not a plan that most of us want to live up to.
Yeah, and you make a point. I have an example in my career. I was blessed. I felt it was a blessing. Called in with a couple. They were, in their early 70s. They'd worked hard. They built up this business over 10, 15 years. It was a new business for them. They were from out of the country, come here, and they were the leading provider in this region. But what had happened is all of a sudden, two things happened. One is they decided they wanted to retire because they had children, grandchildren living spread out literally around the world. So that made a lot of sense, right? Great goal. But the second thing that happened is because of economic times and so on and so forth, their sales in the last 12, 16 months literally almost went vertical. And it fit because of certain economic situations, their business does better. It's really one of those, it does better in bad times, so it's kind of unique. But you projected it out a couple of years out, and I talked them out of selling the business. I said, I know you want to travel. Well, let's talk about they had built up no management team, right? They had 30, 40 employees. In fact, the person that had the set of keys when they were gone was the janitor. Well, because he came from their country and they knew him. But that was his position all the way to the bottom. But when they left town, if you want to get in or whatever, you had to talk to him. But I talked him out of it, and that business just blew up and became worth many times what it was worth based on the history to that point.
But they ask an expert like you to be able to tell them to make or show them how to make the right decision.
And they had, in that case, they had a CPA that really wasn't qualified to work on this kind of deal. They had hired a broker that had the proper connections in my evaluation to sell it. But gosh, don't do it now. Try to see if there's a way you can make 2 or 3 more years and then put those numbers together. And that's what they did. And they walk away with a lot more money. I mean, a lot, like 10 times as much.
Great story.
So that was significant, but you got to prepare. So, well, Jon, thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you and talk to you further about the topic, what's that?
JSTACY, there's no E in it, JSTACY at ADVICOACH, like advisorcoach.com, JStacy at ADVIcoach.com.
And Jon, I know you've got a very special event coming up that's personal here in the Montgomery County area to you, and I want to give you a chance to mention it on the air.
Real briefly, Compassion United, we've been helping the homeless, empowering the homeless to get out of homelessness for the last 14 years. We've got an event coming up April 15th, Thursday, April 15th. We're excited for this gala fundraising event and would like for you to come. Any questions, just contact me.
And that's at your email address,
JStacy at avacoach.com.
Okay, well, good luck on that. And the last but not least, you and I have a kindred spirit in that we believe in continuous reading and trying to understand. You've got a book you brought with us, and I almost forgot to mention it, but it's a great opportunity for anybody that would consider acquiring or merging their business.
This is a real quick read. The Final Act of Ownership, Selling Your Small Business by Jerry Balthus, a friend of mine up in Milwaukee. It's a short read. It'll give you a good idea on what you need to do and what to prepare. But with knowing that, it's still important to get professionals to help you do what you don't have the expertise today.
Well, Jon, that's a great way to end this program. Again, thanks for the soup to nuts conversation, a roadmap to success, mergers and acquisitions. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of this program, but we'll continue the show, so please stay with us, and we'll be right back.
OneBestConsult.com, a community of small business owners where you as an owner can find answers to the most pressing business questions you have. Not sure who to turn to when you have a challenge in your business? Turn to the folks at OneBestConsult.com. That's the number 1, bestconsult.com, where you can always find advice you can use based on common sense business experience. Join our community of like-minded business owners at OneBestConsult.com.
You are listening to the Weekly Business Hour. Rick Schissler, your host. I'm a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of One Best Consult. Well, I hope that you enjoyed our third and final installment of our Soup to Nuts conversation with Mr. Jon Stacy, entitled Roadmap to Success, Mergers and Acquisitions. I think there's a lot of great information there. Many times I found small business people say, gosh, I'm just too small to buy a business or even to consider merging with another business as a way to grow my business. And I tell you, if you listen to the steps and things that Jon Stacy offers, I hope that it empowers you and that you feel that there are possibilities there. It's not for everyone, but it's a great possibility depending on where you are headed with your business. Before we take our bottom of the hour break, I want to mention to you real quick a couple things. First of all, podcast of today's show, video cast, they'll be produced on Wednesday of this week and they'll be posted at our website. That's onebestconsult.com, so you can go there if you want to review something, or I encourage you, share it with your fellow business people. Hopefully it will be beneficial to them as well. What's coming up in the second half of the show? In our Did You Know series, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to talk about how to lose those pesky cell phones that are a problem in your business. And then in my One Best Consult tip of the week, very simple, how do you say thank you? So I encourage you, please stay with us. We're going to take this bottom of the hour break, and we'll be right back with you.
It's all business talk on the Weekly Business Hour every Monday at 11 a.m. right here on Lone Star Community Radio.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
Did you know there are more than 790 abused and neglected children currently in foster care in Montgomery County? Will you help make a difference? I'm Allie Stevens with Casa Child Advocates of Montgomery County. We train and support volunteers to be the voice of children in the foster care system. Kids are removed from their home because of abuse and neglect, and we need volunteers just like you to advocate for these children. To learn more about becoming an advocate, please visit CasaSpeaksForKids.com. That's CasaSpeaksForKids.com.
This is Rick, TRC. Every Tuesday on my show, Afternoons with Lone Star from 3 to 7, I play back-to-back classic rock hits. That's right. I like to call it a 2 for Tuesday or a 3 for whatever it is you'd like. Call the request line, 936-647-3776, or message me on Facebook, Afternoons with Lone Star, make a music request. That's right, you can do it. Here's what else. Go over to our website, irlonestar.com. Get the app on your phone. It's easy. You'll like it.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question, comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station on irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
For business ideas and news you can use, join us on the weekly business hour every Monday at 11 a.m. on Lone Star Community Radio.
Well, you are listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and we're at that point of the show where I would like to do a quick recap of what you've heard from Jon Stacy in our Soup to Nuts conversation. But before I do that, I want to remind you that the podcast, videocast of the program is also available on our channel at YouTube. Just look up the Weekly Business Hour channel, and you can see and hear and watch the show from today on Wednesday of this week. Also want to thank our show sponsor for today, One Best Consult. That's the number one, bestconsult.com. It's a website that's friendly for small business owners, business managers, a place to join a community at no cost to you, to get involved in conversations, share ideas that I hope that may help your business even today. So check it out at onebestconsult.com. Well, a brief review of what we've heard from Jon Stacy. Lots and lots of information. He went through it very succinctly. Started out talking about the 8 steps to develop a relationship so that you can merge or purchase a business. Almost a clinic on what you need to do and consider. First thing I encourage you to keep in mind, this is probably something that you may only do once or twice in your life. You've probably heard the conversation about, well, when you buy a house, you won't do it that often in your life. Some people do, but most of us buy a house and hold it for quite a while before our family changes or we get the idea that we're going to move, whatnot. Well, the same thing here. You're not going to do it very often, so I think it's extremely important that you develop your own internal checklist. And a lot of the stuff and the information that is offered by Jon in the 3-part series walks you through the steps that he works with his clients on. You may add or subtract to that list, but I encourage you, make a list. Go through this methodically, taking step 1 to step 2 to step 3. The second thing I encourage you, as you go through these steps, particularly in the evaluation portion of purchasing or merging with a business, I encourage you to always be prepared, at least in the back of your mind, to back out, to call off the deal. If something isn't right in your mind, one of the biggest areas I think people fail is the return on investment. They want to buy the business, just like that shiny new car, and they just get in so deep emotionally that they have a hard time, or I've seen it several times they just couldn't back out, and the deal on paper, the return on investment, if you will, made no sense after negotiating through, after getting a good look under the hood, as they say. Something about the assets, something about the management, something about vendors, and in particular customers just didn't pan out and support the value that the seller or the merger partner was trying to bring to the table. So second thing, keep in mind that you need to have the ability, the flexibility to back out. And the last thing I pick up, and I would encourage you to do, particularly touched on in this third part that you heard earlier today, and that is the integration. In other words, once you buy it, once you merge, you got to bring everything together. And I think this is the most difficult thing. And if you look at some of the big mergers, and I'm talking about the Fortune 500 companies, they fail a majority percent of the time. They fail to achieve the results and goals that the stockholders were told in the beginning would happen once the two companies got together or once the company was acquired. And I think it's because they fail on the integration. They either don't have a good plan, but more often than not, as Jon says, it's implementation. It's taking your plan to bring that new business and put it with your business, whether you own the whole thing or you've got a merger partner, however it works out. The failure to bring that together, and the key is communications, and people drop the ball. Again, I go back to the first thing I said. Remember, this is sometimes just a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Be prepared. Put your list together. Make sure you know who you're buying from, who you're merging with, and that you can get along, not just at the closing, but after the closing. There's still a need to communicate, and most importantly, a need to continually communicate with the new employees, vendors, and customers. Key point there, customers. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to offer you my Did You Know series idea. Get more done in the same amount of time. Last week was our talk. This week we're going to talk about cell phones. They bring a lot of challenges to every business, but I've got a couple of observations I'd like to share with you that may improve your productivity with cell phones. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
For business ideas and news you can use, join us on the Weekly Business Hour every Monday at 11 a.m. on Lone Star Community Radio.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
For those of you who like your partners, your gumbo, and your music salty, well, we're here to help with the music. Julian Shea here, host of Lone Star Country Nights Thursday, your weekly dose of roots and Americana and all the music that makes this part of the country special. We stir in Western swing, honky-tonk, Zydeco, Texas blues, outlaw country, and put a pinch of red dirt, and then we smoke it over a slow fire. Then listen to the results Thursday nights on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Does your company have needs that can be met by an employee who is dependable, hardworking, enthusiastic, motivated, cooperative, respectful, and punctual? Conroe Independent School District Special Education Department can meet your needs by connecting you with potential employees that have been preparing for a lifetime of employment. We have numerous individuals seeking paid and unpaid work experiences. If your company is interested in seeing how we can meet your business needs, call Conroe ISD Special Education Department to find the best employees for you at 936-709-7671.
Not sure who to turn to when you have a problem in your business? Listen to the Weekly Business Hour on Lone Star Community Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and at this part of the show, we're going to talk about, did you know how cell phones really, really injure the productivity of businesses today? Cell phone usage has become a habit. similar in my mind to like smoking a cigarette. But in this case, almost everybody is addicted to the use of the phone. And the challenge for you and I as small business owners is when people bring their cell phones to work and during the work time, they're on the phone. One of the examples I most often come across is when I'm driving down the road and there's some construction work going on the highway. And you look over and you see workers who are building a highway that are standing to the side on their cell phones. And it's pretty amazing. And of course, if I'm the employer, or if I'm the governmental authority, the state, the county that's paying them, I need to be concerned about that. But I suggest you need to be concerned in your own business, if you're not already. What can I do about cell phone usage on company time? Well, you can take the hard line and just say no cell phones, and anybody caught with a cell phone will be shot or fired or put on the bench. But I think the fact that everybody's glued to their cell phone, that may not be the best approach, at least from a productivity point of view. Morale would suffer. But again, I've seen that in some businesses. And as owner of the business, like everything else, you get a chance to do it your way. But what I'd suggest is you look at where phones are in your business. For an example, during meetings or trainings, no phones. Just set some boundaries in particular situations. If I'm working on the shop floor, no phones. I mean, that's a safety consideration, right? When you're interacting with customers, whether it's within the premises or off the premises, no phones. And driving, this is one that I came across an article recently that I felt was really an eye-opener. I did not know this, but we need to know it, is OSHA has some restrictions that if you have an employee who's in their vehicle, they need to have hands-free access to their phone if they're on company business. And when they're driving to see a customer or make a delivery or picking up parts, they're on company business. And the company is obligated to make sure they have hands-free and, to the best of their ability, make sure they use it. My point is, first, set some boundaries. Now, again, you can absolutely say no more cell phones. That's the end of the discussion. But I think you're going to find in the long run, from a morale and productivity, it's better to kind of fence it in, if you will. And so I would fence it in and set certain times, again, meetings with customers, training sessions, anything that you need the full attention of individuals, and absolutely shop floor. If you have a manufacturing or a shop, they don't need to do it. One of the strategies I've worked with clients on in an office environment is they put their phones in their drawer of their desk, and they don't come out except for breaks, for the break or for lunch, and they can check their email, they can check their text messages. The real challenge, though, I have come to understand in doing some research on this, is the ones that play games, that you have employees that play video games on their phones. I had one article I read where a company found that their internet was being drawn down. It slowed down because they had so many people playing games, streaming off of the internet, that the company Wi-Fi internet was going slower. And they had to rectify it from that point of view. And I've actually worked on a situation where you had employee usage at the computers that were watching movies and things like that. So this may be going on in your business and you're just not aware of it. So when you set these guidelines, or if you put a fence around it, then you also want to define in your policy of when it's acceptable to use the phone, not just when it is not, but when it is. Try to give people some guidance of when they can use their phone and what purposes are permitted. Also, you want to convey to people, and I've seen so many people, you have too, that don't know the proper etiquette. Like you're in a restaurant and phones start ringing, or I was in church Sunday and an Amber Alert went off interrupting the minister. Well, they didn't turn their phone off, and I'm sure they just forgot. But go through this, try to train people and say, look, you may not recognize this. When you're talking on a phone and you're in a busy area and you're on business, you're going to disrupt people, and it's going to reflect badly on the company. Put your policy in writing, whatever you decide to do. And if you'd like more information about this topic, send me an email. Just send it right here to the station, rick@irlonestar.com, and I'll be glad to to respond to your particular question. There are policies that are already been written that are available online that are free. The Small Business Administration has a particularly good policy that gives you some guidance. So if you decide to go in and check this out and make sure that your company is not losing productivity, if it is, you want to put a policy in effect. You want to train your people so that cell phones don't disrupt and drag down your productivity. Well, at this point, I'd like to offer you what I think is a great tip of the week. My one best consult tip of the week this week is just simply how to say thank you. You know, this is an area that I was raised, but the current generation, I'm not sure. We were taught to say thank you. We were taught to say please. We were taught to say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and it became part of who we are. And obviously, to say thank you is just very important. But I think a lot of businesses, a vast majority of businesses, at least the ones that I come in contact with as clients or that I personally use in my business and personally, miss a wonderful opportunity, and the opportunity is to say thank you. I believe every time I do business with someone, I need to thank them in a certain way. Email is very accepted today, so it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be time-consuming. And my first recommendation is say thank you as often as you can. I mean, that's another contact with your customer. Thank your vendors, thank your employees, goes without saying. But thank your customers every time you get a chance. So if I make a purchase from your business, I get a note back from you, typically email's great. Have a template so that all that has to happen is you put their name and their email address into your template, and even some CRM systems out there will do that automatically. But you simply build a template. I encourage you to visit places like Constant Contact. It's an email service. If you're not familiar with it, it's Constant Contact. And they go through this whole idea, and they have lots of templates to show you. A little creativity, if you have someone on staff or you have an outside PR, advertising, graphics company, they can make up a nice template for you that's custom. But the key is that when people have a chance to say, businesses have a chance to say thank you, they need to move on it. And let me give you some examples of the opportunities. You got a thank you note for buying something, for using your services. If you do some kind of event, you appeared somewhere, you're part of an organization, and people participated somehow, send them a thank you for coming, for being there. And of course, your thank you is going to have your company information. There's just no doubt about it, okay? If you have a thank you coupon, they've done business, or you came across, you met someone at a networking event, to drop them an email that has a coupon in it that encourages them to do business. Even any kind of follow-up that you can do is very, very important. The thing about a thank you note, it has three parts, two of which I am very familiar with. The other one I really learned while I was researching this topic, and I got interested in it. The first one is, who are you saying thank you to? Pretty straightforward. Who is it? The individual or organization that did business or had contact with you. Second, why are they being thanked? Be specific. It's very straightforward. And the third one is, and something I have not put in my thank you notes, in most of them, is what do you want them to do next? In other words, that old call to action that we hear about all the time in sales and marketing. Always got to have a call to action. Most of websites for businesses have call to action. Think about putting that in your thank you note. Now, I know that may be new and revolutionary, but I think it's a great idea that you tell these people, at the very least, we look forward to having you in the store next time, but think about the power. Next time you come in, bring the copy of this note and you get 10% off your purchase. That kind of thing. Now, you don't want to get too salesy in the content, and you don't want a lengthy thank you note. But I think if you hit those three things, who's saying thank you, why are they being thanked, and what do you want them to do? Who being you, why are they being thanked for their service they used, for the product they bought, and thirdly, what do you want them to do next? Your company logo obviously should be part of every thank you note. It goes without saying, the contact information doesn't need to be overwhelming in size, but it needs to be there, not just something under a signature that you got to squint your eyes to read, okay? So it's very important that you do that. And one thing I want to double back with in the little bit of time I have left, who's saying thank you? Sounds pretty straightforward. I'm saying thank you, right? I'm sending the note. Well, make sure in the from email address they recognize you, your company, or your organization. This is part of getting people to open it up. Okay, yeah, I did business. I'm going to open it up. Again, I mentioned the logo. Think about the colors. If you have colors in your logo for your company, and you design templates for saying thank you in various situations, because you may have multiple templates, be sure that you use those colors and be sure that logo stands out. Well, use every opportunity to say thank you. I think it's a great thing to do, and I think it's not done nearly as often as it could be to help you build your business. I encourage you, please put a note on your calendar to join us next week right here on irlonestar.com at 11 a.m. We're going to have a great show for you. We're going to repeat one of the soup to nuts conversations based on what people have requested. So can your business grow through a merger with another business, or perhaps through the purchase of another business? That's the question we've talked about, and we're going to do a quick review and review one of the shows in the discussion Soup to Nuts with Jon Stacy, the AvaCoach. By the way, if you want to reach out to Jon, his email is jstacy, S-T-A-C-Y, at avacoach.com. Again, look for a podcast, videocast of today's show at irlonestar.com, the radio station's website. That's irlonestar.com. Or on Facebook at the Weekly Business Hour. Thank you for joining us today. Stay in touch with what's happening in Montgomery County right here on Lone Star Community Radio. And until next week, I always encourage people two things. Stay engaged in your business, your customers, your vendors, and most of all, your employees, and focus on what counts in your business. See you next week.